Okay, oh, I guess it's just recording. Okay, well, welcome to the SIG-NETWORK Ingress GA sync meeting. It's October 10th, 2019. So let's get started. So looking at the agenda, we discussed last week, before meeting time. So I got some feedback from a couple of people where this meeting time was actually quite bad for them. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to reschedule this current meeting, and I didn't want to schedule it and then just have no one show up. So we're going to have the meeting this week at this time, but I will send out an email on the mailing list to try to see if it's possible for a different time. Notably, some people in APAC, and then I think just some of the times didn't work out so well. So expect that email to go out. I heard on SIG architecture that we don't have to wait for the meeting to sync up, and that was one of the things that was an issue with getting a good meeting time. So going forward, we'll probably also try to do things on mailing list or on the GitHub issues, just to be able to get more asynchronous interactions. So that's it about meeting times. Any comments on that? I know I got quite a few emails from people who couldn't show up. It would be, after I send out the email, it would be good to know like what times do work for people. I think this is good for like the North America folks, basically. Okay, so the next item was we discussed last time about potentially creating a branch. And Chris, I know you emailed Jordan and he sent you to some folks. I actually talked to some of the people who were involved with creating a branch last time, notably for the server-side apply feature. And it sounded like it was a little bit painful, mostly for the automation side. So it sounded like server-side apply was a big enough change that they didn't want to abandon small pieces of it in the code base, but sort of getting all the automation, especially the post commit and the pre-submits working, was kind of painful. So it seems like, feels like we shouldn't be creating a new branch just for the API changes, but maybe we would need to have some kind of strategy around collaboration in a third place, and then sort of someone is responsible for packing all the PRs together for the final merge, because we can't do the API change in bits and pieces. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, reading through their journey report and whatnot, it seemed like the biggest ones were having to constantly merge with master, and then just out of the box not having prowl jobs set up for the branch. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess if we would have to do it like in a third-party place to begin with, does that really?
That's true. So if, Chris, you want to explore it with just creating one, and then we can see how it is, then we can try it out.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, I guess it's been a while since anyone's done a big API shift like this. Like, you know, we create new APIs all the time. I guess, though, it's rare that they go from such a big thing, like V1 or V1 beta 1 to V1 and have a bunch of things in them at the same time.
Yeah, so Chris, if you want to take up, I think all you need to do is to file some issue with the maintainer who can create the branch. So that seems straightforward. The non-straightforward is like how we get the test infra to add the pieces, or maybe we don't care as much about that. And then maybe we can just create it and see, and then we can delete it if it gets to be a problem.
Yeah, sure, that works. So yeah, I think I just saw that email then someone was replying to your original.
Right. Okay. Can I take action item is to file the issue to create the branch?
Yep.
And then we can see what it means to have it separate. I think at the end of the day, what we would do is just basically take the stuff on the branch, rebase all of it so that it just like clean up the commits, and then just do that as a single PR.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, from their experience, it sounded like it would be just really confusing to try to merge it in as is.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it's not too big of an issue, assuming everything goes in within that release, right?
Yes.
Such that like no branch would really be necessary. It's just if it does slip, we're kind of.
Well, we can always just hard rebase. Like we can just take all the patches and kind of throw away the old history and then kind of like throw it onto the new stuff.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah,
yeah, I'll reply to that then.
Okay. Yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, so KEP review. I started going through the KEP. Unfortunately, I didn't get time to update it, but just take a look here. So I think what it feels like leaning towards now is to get rid of the health checks proposal out of this one. So we will be left with defining the path behavior, fixing some of the naming, adding hostname wildcards, and Ingress class and the alternative backend types. I think there's still some discussion about what the appropriate sort of API representation for backend types is. I have to look at the conversation. But the idea in terms of scheduling would be to update this one this week, solicit final feedback, try to merge it, and then we go create a new PR based on more feedback. How does that sound? Chris, I know you've also had some activity on that.
Yeah, so we're saying basically drop health check, keep everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I
And
think the two biggest ones is like the path matching, and then probably the health check would have been the next
right,
like biggest one.
Yeah, and like basically that PR has been up for so long. I feel like it's worthwhile just merging it and then kind of addressing most of the issues, merging it, and then trying to make a follow-on PR, because otherwise it just gets very confusing to keep track of the diffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I also submitted a PR kind of like demonstrating, I guess, the Ingress class, but I don't know if it's correct. If you want to take a look at that.
I see. Oh, can you link that PR actually? Here.
Yeah, I can add it. I'm on the mobile at the moment.
Okay. All right, and then the next item is Alex. I think you have a conformance test demo.
Hi, yeah. So I know this was a topic that was discussed last week, and Rafi pulled me in to come up with this this little tool. So let me just share my screen. Oh, I can't share my screen because.
Oh wait, let me see. Maybe I need to allow you to do it.
I think only one person can share a screen at a time.
Oh, okay. Let me drop off. Let's see. Okay.
And Okay. So you can see my screen, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, conformance test, because, well, we have different Ingress implementation, Ingress controller implementation, and they don't all behave the same. So we wanted to come up with a set of tests that would, prove the right behavior. One of the topic was around path-based rules. So path matching, prefix handling, how are they different from one implementation to the other? So I built this little project. It's a Go CLI, which allows me to list the actual rules that I'll be testing against. And at the moment, this will be running against the GKE cluster where I have Ambassador installed. So Ingress Ambassador is running. I have different backend services for serving those Ingress backend. And I have a few ingresses that are already provisioned on the cluster. So if I just execute my test cases, well, I have a few assertions that run. I have failures, mostly in this case. It's because Ambassador does not handle the path prefix the same way as Nginx does. Ambassador strips it away, whereas Nginx keeps it in the downstream request. And these can all be tested against multiple implementation, just switching the Ingress controller that's running and making sure that the deployments of the different ingresses use the proper class of ingress.
Cool. This is awesome. So I know the Ingress Nginx author also is interested in this. So I think what we should do is mail the SIG and be like, hey, I think this should go into Kubernetes SIGs as a repo. And sort of are you guys okay with moving this to a common place?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that would be great. And then we can, I don't know if we should do it overall or just for Ingress. We have to kind of figure out what the rules are around how many repos we should be creating. Because generally speaking, we should have things like this. And right now, most of it lives in the E2E framework. But as part of Kubernetes project, kind of trying to break stuff up, it might make sense to have a conformance-oriented, especially for networking, like a conformance-oriented repo just for this library code. But I think it's worthwhile taking this on the mailing list and kind of getting a feel.
Sure. Finding it a home.
Yes.
Yep.
In the end, does it make sense then to merge it back to how do you get something accepted into the conformance official suite? Or does the conformance suite not apply to things that are CRDs that would be external?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ingress is not a CRD, so I guess it's different. What I'm thinking is if we have this conformance test repo, the E2E tests that do conformance may in fact vendor it, and then it just makes it more flexible for sort of developing this kind of stuff. We have to vet it with how people are thinking about the conformance sort of stuff overall.
What does this? Sorry if this is a newbie question, but what do the existing conformance tests what do they check for?
Specifically for Ingress, they're pretty lame in that I think there's just 2 tests and then they just see that they work.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no very explicit written down case-by-case test cases.
Yeah. So we were thinking of this a little more as almost a little bit of an executable spec kind of thing for those portions of the spec that are sometimes more succinct to codify than in code than English. behavior of trailing slashes and whatnot. But yeah, so the non-ingress conformance things, like what are those? What kind of stuff do those check?
Oh, so what I meant is that in general we have like DNS for SIG-NETWORK. So my question would be, would there be just a conformance repo or an ingress conformance repo?
Okay, so you test the different DNS implementations and whatnot behave the same way?
Yeah, it's basically like right now, the conformance, the spec itself is in Kubernetes/DNS.
Yep.
Kubernetes/DNS is basically the kubedns implementation.
Yep.
And it's like, well, if it's going to be core DNS, then like, is that the right place for things to live?
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, the other repos that we have on GitHub are going to be ingress-GCE and ingress-nginx, neither of which are generic, right? So we'd have to create a third one for just ingress. So that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess maybe a question worth asking is like, who's sort of the target for this? Because at first we were thinking of this as just, okay, something, if you're implementing an ingress, you would want to run this. And then we're like, actually, right, a fair amount of people sort of spend time evaluating different ingress options and choosing them because it's kind of, what is it? The external part of ingress is sort of, okay, you want to plug into your cloud infrastructure, and that part is pretty much a technical problem, but like the capabilities you have once your traffic gets into the cluster can kind of depend on your domain and on even like your org structure and whatnot and how you're setting up your cluster. And so, we found it's actually fairly common for users to kind of evaluate different ingress options against each other. And from that perspective, it's like, okay, maybe users would want to use a tool like this to kind of make sure that all the options they're evaluating play nice when it comes to the parts that should just work out of the box, like, external aspects of integration.
So actually, in that sort of similar vein, and we're going to talk about this in the next SIG-NETWORK, is that, at least in my mind, a lot of the activities, the following activities are very, very similar. What's checked in the end-to-end test? What's checked for diagnostic? What's checked for conformance? And right, and all, like in production, in test. So ideally, we would be able to create a reusable library for checking these things, and then they can plug into the various things. So if we could, for example, and we'd have to vet this with how the conformance test in Kubernetes is organized, is like maybe this is like a library portion that then can be used for end-to-end testing, and then this and that. So like that would be an ideal state. So like we would just share one thing that's for ingress or some of these standard APIs.
Cool.
Okay, so if you can do me a favor, it would be worth emailing out on the SIG-NETWORK to be like, hey, we have this conformance thing. Does it make sense to do it generically? And then also, does it make sense to create a repo on SIG, Kubernetes SIGs under SIG-NETWORK to put this?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's see. So the next thing is we talked about the KEP. So target, let's get at least this current PR merged by next week, and then we can iterate. I think after that has gone in, we can start talking about specifically like the kind of what our schedule will be. And yeah, that's about it. And then I think the conformance tests, once we create the repo, hopefully we can create the repo, that would be we can also come up with, file issues to see like if people want to pitch in to kind of create the conformance tests. Okay, that's it for the agenda. Does anyone else have any other items? Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. This will conclude the meeting. We'll see you in 2 weeks or at SIG Network. Oh, hi, Dave. Okay. All right. See you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.